pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lana, roll call, please.
Commissioner Klaus.
Here.
Crawford.
Here.
Johnson is excused. Kropa.
Here?
Max Bauer.
Here.
Wheelock. Absent.
He's on his way.
Yeah.
And Lathrop.
I'm here. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, then they'll stand as submitted. And now it's time for first public comment. Lana, it's your turn again, please.
All right. Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, thank you, Lana. At this point, is there anybody that has a public comment? Please don't be shy. Come on up, please.
Hello, my name is Samantha Garcia. My address is 933 Valley View Drive, Traverse City, Michigan.
Can you maybe pull the microphone up a little closer?
Okay, is that better?
Is that microphone on? Okay, it doesn't seem like it is.
Yep. That's all.
Okay, okay, good,
Okay,
thank you.
I will try and think. I come to you today representing my 20-year-old daughter who is a resident of Grand Traverse County and has a developmental disability. I don't even know where to start. I am a Grand Traverse native, 3rd generation. I have 3 children, 2 of which I'd probably say are MSU School of Medicine at the moment. And Hannah, who has been the joy of our life, also has struggled not only to survive, but to live in our community and not to be institutionalized. At 3 years of age, she was placed on the Children's Medicaid waiver in order to allow us to care for her at home. When she turned 18, she was transferred to the Rehabilitation Supports waiver, whose main purpose and goal is to provide home and community supports in order to prevent institutionalization. Savannah suffers from an unknown genetic syndrome resulting in autism, immune deficiency, seizures, and the list goes on. Due to the multiple medical interventions, including numerous neurosurgeries in the last 4 years, she developed an extreme anxiety disorder, which causes her to be aggressive, non-communicative, and we have gone to enormous lengths to set her up in her own apartment and prevent hospitalization and institutionalization. I have worked tirelessly as an advocate in this community for special education and community mental health services. After testifying in a hearing 4 weeks ago for a family who had requested a Medicaid Fair Hearing Act, CMH reduced my daughter's services to 4 hours a day, giving me the choice of quitting my job, becoming homeless, and caring for her, or placing her in an institution. I never dreamed that my efforts to assist my fellow community members would result in such devastating consequences for my own child. I have many stories for this committee as an advocate of what families are going through right now at the hands of community mental health, and I ask that this board call upon community mental health to be accountable for the services they are charged with serving our community members with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else, please don't be shy. Okay, at that point, we'll close this public comment, and we go to approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Is there a second?
Me.
Okay. Max Bauer? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar. Lana, you again, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted receive and file or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file, no items. B, approval, 1, Google Apps, email, calendar, docs, contract renewal. 2, camera surveillance and recording policy.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience that wants something removed from the consent calendar? Okay, anybody on the board? Okay, can we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
Okay, second by Crawford. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
John
Okay.
gets to go home.
Is there any special order of business? No, I guess not. Item removed from consent calendar? No. Department action items. Prosecuting attorney.
Thank you, Dr. Lathrop. As I indicated in my memo attached with the documents I provided you, at the beginning of this year, Governor Snyder signed into law an act that amends Michigan's Freedom of Information Act that mostly deals with how fees are to be calculated and how they are processed by a public body. Part of that law that was passed states that a public body like Grand Traverse County has to establish procedures and guidelines, and then a public summary of the procedures and guidelines. And then those need to be available to the public free of charge, including posted on the county's website. So I have met with various county staff, mostly the staff that deals with FOIA on a regular basis. I have reviewed with staff a template developed by the Michigan Township Association that deals with counties. It's been reviewed, and so it's being presented to you today as an informational item. I'm not asking you to take any action. Do note that we do have to have this in place by July 1 of this year, but there are tweaks that I've indicated in my memo, mostly dealing with working with IT to develop email accounts for handling of FOIA, as well as getting that internet presence put together. I will indicate this, the one positive thing from all this is that this county hasn't updated its FOIA policy in a long time, and it's allowed us to do that. It's allowed us to create uniform forms that can be used by everybody countywide. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any question you may have.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Counselor. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
For all
that.
the work. I
Yeah.
know.
Thank you.
I know the changes prompted some panic amongst people in the state.
Yeah, it
Quickly
did.
moving, yeah. It was interesting to watch the procession of that, but thank you.
I looked at all those, a lot of complex documents there. so,
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, item B, central dispatch.
Jason Torrey, Deputy Director for Central Dispatch 911.
I don't think that's on.
It's not.
Jason, why don't you sit in the chair next to Lana? Is it on now? Okay,
How about that?
that's better.
Okay. Jason Torrey, Deputy Director, Central Dispatch 911. The agenda item that's been presented to you outlines some basic information about what we're trying to accomplish. As you know, the 911 surcharge was approved by the voters to be increased to help some of our infrastructure needs to get accomplished. Over the last several years, we've worked really hard at trying to find the best solutions for those infrastructure needs. Prior to bringing on the technical consultant, I think we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to accomplish and how we wanted to accomplish it. What we've asked for tonight is to have our technical consultant, Eric Seeley with Empiric Solutions, come up, do a brief presentation, but give you as much information as you need to make a good decision about how we want to proceed with these investments, and why we want to actually target certain, in particular, infrastructure sole source items. There's a couple in there that you have to take into consideration. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time right now. We'll get right into this, and then we can do some Q&A afterwards.
Well, are you going to be asking us to make a motion about it tonight?
Yeah, what we're going to ask for is the approval to move our 911 circuits from AT&T to PFN. We're going to ask for approval to authorize a letter of authorization for PFN Network to move those circuits and work with the carriers to make sure that's accomplished. We're also going to ask for approval to purchase a Spectracom net clock, and then we're going to ask for approval to enter in the negotiation process for new radio consoles on our telephony system and our logging recorder.
Okay, thank you very much for the summary. And we have another speaker. Come on up.
I do have a lot of slides here, by the way. Eric Seeley with Empiric Solutions. You guys hired me, I believe it was back in February or March of this year, to work with Jason and Dispatch to review the systems. And so let me first get this up here. Technical difficulties. So first, just a little bit of background of who I am and the experience that I have. Jason and I have been actually in various meetings over the last 3 years, probably, in these regional type dispatch discussions that have been taking place. And specifically in the last 2 years, there's been a very concentrated effort in Region 7, which is basically from Roscommon County North, to look at how all of these dispatch centers can work together. How can they share costs? How can they reduce costs? How can they share systems? How can we look at this as a region without losing our unique identities and the services that are contained within each PSAP? But how can we do that and do that better and do that more effectively? So I've been working with that region, also responsible for most of the Upper Peninsula's 911 network. So we have a lot of experience with 911, a lot of experience with understanding what those needs are. We're actually based in Petoskey, so we're not too far away, and I've got a lot of connections back here to Traverse City. So that's our background, basically. We also don't sell any services. We are strictly a service company. So while we may maintain the network and provide IT services to some of those entities, we don't actually sell any product or have any relationships with PFN or Trado or in digital, and those are some companies you're going to hear us talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to blow through some of these slides. If you want me to back up, please let me know. A quick overview. Here are the 5 items that we're looking at doing. 911 trunks, a GPS net clock, an NG 911 phone system, that's hardware that's in this building, an IP audio recorder, also hardware that's in this building, and a radio console. Those are the 5 things that we're going to be looking at and walking through this evening. So the first one is NG 911. And how technical do you guys want me to get with this? I mean, I can get into the weeds, which I know I'm not going to do. But do you want a quick overview of what that is and how 911 works today versus how it's going to work when NG 911 is in place?
Sure.
NG 911 is a new system. It's IP-based. So think of going from your analog dial-up connection to the internet to what you have today in some businesses with fiber-based internet. It's a drastic change from an old technology to a new technology. It's how the calls are delivered from the telephone company to 911. And the technology that's in use in the entire Lower Peninsula today is actually technology that was designed in 1968. It works very, very well, but it's very, very old. The systems, the selective routers, all those technical things that make it happen are, of course, newer technology. But the fundamental layer of how it works today is literally something that was designed by all the Ma Bells back in 1968. So it's old, and it can't do the things that we need it to do today. Things like getting telemetry data from crash scenes. OnStar They know immediately how many people were in that car, if it was a GM, mind you. They know how many passengers were in that car. They know the weight of those passengers. They know if those passengers are still in their seat. They know that data when that accident occurs. The only way they can get that to dispatch today is by telephone. They can tell the person over the phone what happened during that accident. Now, will that data immediately get to dispatch when NG 911 is in place? No. But the network will support it. Today, the network cannot support that. There is no other option other than to tell people by voice. In the next Gen 911 world, that network has the capability to bring all that data in if the dispatch center wants that, if those relationships are built. So that's one example. There are a multitude of things, but it is a foundation that lets us look at this network a lot differently and look at it from a regional perspective. How do we share data between here and Kalkaska or here in Antrim County? Those border calls that come in from a cell phone where it goes to the wrong dispatch center. How do we get all that data back to the correct county? Those are things that are band-aided today, happen today, but they're not efficient. And a lot of data doesn't get transferred except by voice. So NG 911 allows that to happen. In the most simplistic sense, and this is very overly simplified, it's kind of like taking, what we're asking for is we're looking at taking our phone line, let's say it was AT&T, POTS lines, to Charter. We're simply moving who is delivering those. The difference being PFN is the new company. They are doing this over a much more modern network that I just described. AT&T has not done anything to invest into that network. There's one router that sits in Cadillac that delivers those calls to this county. It's very reliable, but it is a single point of failure. And they have not done anything to invest into that to upgrade it to NG 911 capability. PFN is a company based in the UP. They're actually a combination of Beriga Telephone and Hiawatha Telephone. Both companies are over 100 years old. They joined together to create another entity called PFN. They have been working with the Upper Peninsula, and there's a group called the UPA based in Escanaba. It handles, I can't speak specifically to that, but they handle all of the human resources and type things for counties in the Upper Peninsula. They were then chosen to be the 911 authority over a regional network. So they share CAD, they share their 911 systems, they are starting to share radio systems, and that organization is doing it. So it's a very regional type thing, and NG 911 is making that happen. So PFN has been around, and they've gone live in the Upper Peninsula, and AT&T has actually pulled out their electronics. They can no longer deliver a 911 call in the Upper Peninsula. It's 100% handled by PFN. The other thing that's interesting about this is the cost to the community is zero. This is provided through what's called a technical pool. It's a surcharge that goes on all telephone bills. That money goes into a pool in Lansing and then is divvied back out. And that's how AT&T is being paid today for their services. So this would just shift those charges over to, or those funds over to PFN. And that's how they would be getting paid for this. So there's zero cost to the county, and it's simply, like I said, kind of moving just one carrier to another. In terms of options, we could stay with AT&T. We're going to be mandated to move from AT&T at some point due to regulations and the lack of capabilities on that network. Another company is called Intrado. You actually have a relationship with them now. The phone system that you currently have is a Positron phone system that was made by Intrado. They can also provide NG 911 services. They have declined to do that in the state of Michigan, at least in this area, because they are seeing what PFN can do and they can't compete. They would actually have to charge more for that service than what PFN would be charging. So in talking with them, they've actually declined. So our only option right now is PFN. We've already touched on how it's funded. Like I said, I'm going to kind of move through this quickly. I guess at this point, are there any questions with that summary? And I know I've glossed over a lot of things. So.
Looks like no.
Okay. So at this point, the process is basically, and this is in your packet, are two resolutions, or a resolution and a letter of authorization. And that resolution is amending, and I always forget the term, it's amending your 911 plan. It's an administrative amendment to that plan that will basically say your 911 calls for this county are no longer delivered through AT&T, but instead through PFN. The letter of authorization takes work away from your clerk. instead of your clerk having to contact the 50 or 60 telephone companies that actually provide services in this county, that gives the authority to PFN to work on your behalf to talk to those different telephone companies so they direct the 911 calls to the correct entity.
Want us to handle that right now?
Do we want to do these one by one?
Let's do them one at a time.
Yeah.
We'll forget by the time we get
Okay.
I will.
Any questions for him? Okay, any motions?
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we authorize moving from AT&T to the PFN system for our 911 calls.
Is there a second? Support. Supported by Klaus. Yes, sir.
Just the only question, I also have a third-party supplier for my phone system in my business, but it's still all done and operated under AT&T lines, and all the service is done by AT&T line, or personnel. Is this a completely separate system then, or will it still come in on the AT&T wires?
To this building would be coming over a completely separate system. PFN owns 2,800 miles worth of fiber optic cabling within the state of Michigan, and they have cabling, they will run cabling to this building. They're within a couple blocks of this building right now.
Thank you.
I have a question. How long will it take to implement this?
Yeah, the implementation timeframe is really dictated by how long it takes the carriers to swing their 911 trunks or lines from AT&T over to PFN, and they are given by the FCC rules 6 months to complete that process. Okay. Some of them have this done in a very short period of time. Some of them take 6 months. So PFN has told us 6 to 8 months because there are some legal contracts that they have to deal with, and it takes some time.
So will we have dual systems for a period of time?
They do a warm cutover, so you will have both at the same time. You will not lose 911 during this process.
Okay. Any other, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move to approve a letter of authorization for Peninsula Fiber Network to act on behalf of Grand Traverse County 911 for the rearrangement of the 911 circuits.
Thank you.
Support.
Second. Support, okay. Any discussion?
We did have this discussion at 911, just about sole source, and Dean was at our 911 meeting and was able to answer the questions there, because I figured our board would be concerned about following our purchasing policy for the county, and we did seem to have support for this choice, so
Thank you.
not a whole lot of conversation.
Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's do the next one.
Okay, I'm going to skip a bunch of slides. I didn't know if there would be technical questions, so I kept slides up here to address those. Okay, the next item is the GPS net clock. This is a time synchronization device that keeps accurate time throughout the network, throughout all of the components of the 911 system. Again, looking at this from a regional perspective, this is the standard net clock that is being used throughout the region. It's less than $10,000, so I don't know how much this matters for the board in terms of going through too many details on this. There are about 3 companies that make 911 compliant net clocks. 2 of those companies make a clock that supports a single or dual system, meaning it would support your radios or your phones. We need to support 3 or 4 things. So the only company that makes that is a company called Spectracom. That's consistent with other net clocks in the region, and those net clocks can then back each other up and work together as a single unit. So at this point, we're seeing this as the only option. We have gotten multiple prices from this from different vendors, and the most recent price was around the $8,000 mark, and that was April 30th of this year. I don't really have a whole lot more to say about that. It's a necessary thing to have accurate time on these networks. So, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the purchase of the Spectracom net clock.
Is there a second?
I will support, and just ask Dean, is the motion necessary?
I think in this regard, we should do it because it's all part of a package. And just since you asked a question, I think one of the things to remember as Eric explains the other components is the fact that we have the ability to be, is it interoperable with the other
Yeah.
And I think that's,
The foundation of this, that NG 911 network brings fiber to this building. And this is happening throughout the state of bringing fiber to all of these 911 centers. And while it will be something else that you would have to approve later, the ability to tie those networks together from a data perspective, and there will be a cost for that, that won't be free, but that possibility is there. So the ability to share things beyond 911 would be possible. It's out of scope here today, but you guys are tied with Antrim County Courts, I believe. Grand Traverse and Antrim they work together.
Yes.
Those two buildings will have fiber to them through PFN. If PFN's pricing is such that it makes sense, then your IT department could look at utilizing them for connectivity. The great thing about that is the network construction to those buildings will have already been paid for through that technical pool. Now, whether you choose to do that or not down the road makes no difference on the ability for PFN to provide these services. But you have more options. You can continue to use whatever you're using now, I'm not sure what that is, but those will be possibilities. So there's a lot more to this, and I bring up the network component where net clocks, sharing resources from a PSAP are very important, but there are also other things that the county can look at in the future.
Sonny?
And I apologize because I should have asked Don for his input when we had the first motion. I would like to hear from Don Sheehan, our IT director, in regard to, because we have fiber optic into this building now, correct?
Correct.
So maybe, I don't care, that
Wanna come up,
microphone,
Don?
I think, I should have asked the question when we
Don, do you want to
took
stay
the
right
first
there?
vote, but.
I'll just stand here, that's fine. So in regards to the fiber coming in the building,
Well, in regard to this change, do you agree with this idea that this switch over, from AT&T to the fiber optic will give us better service?
it will, and it's really, in this regard right now, it's only 911. So it's not affecting our internet service, even though those are options that we could have through either PFN. And that's what, we do have 3 different providers with fiber right now. We have Charter, Light and Power, but that's just local. And then AT&T has fiber. But it is nice to get other providers in the building, so when we go out for bid for internet service, we know they'll be competitive because we know the other provider is already here. But back to the 911 side, I actually met with Jason and Eric also and kind of went through the proposal. And I've been sitting in on some of the meetings too with the other counties and where the UP has gone with their system and the regional approach. And it just all makes sense. And in this regard here, though, PFN is really going to be the only provider since AT&T is not moving forward in this to provide the 911 service.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner McFarland.
Eric, I saw your presentation at Central Dispatch, so I'm going to ask you a question I already know the answer to. Would you touch briefly upon, you mentioned the technical pool, would you touch briefly upon the benefits of us moving forward, for instance, this Spectracom net clock? You mentioned down the road we might be able to take funding out of the technical pool.
Not for those types of things. The technical pool is specific to delivery of 911 services.
Well, you said when we connectivity. Did I misunderstand?
Yeah, let me clarify. The first item, the NG 911 component with PFN, because they are a carrier and because they are capable of delivering 911 services to PSAPs, to 911s, they can dip into that technical pool to get reimbursed for the cost in delivering those 911 services.
And the technical pool is a pool of?
The technical pool is a pool of money that is funded by everyone in this room and everybody that lives in the state of Michigan. It's on your phone bills. I always mess up how much this is. It's 19 cents, 39 cents. It varies about 40 cents here. Okay. And so that then goes to Lansing, and then that is divvied out by the Michigan Public Service Commission. They review those charges from PFN, AT&T, Verizon. Those are the only 3, I think, in the state right now, Frontier, sorry, that actually deliver 911 services. They submit their bills, the MPSC reviews those bills, validates that that's a valid charge, and then pays those carriers for the delivery of those services. So really, everybody that has a phone line in this county is helping fund that. And that's how it's been for decades, yeah.
Any other
Does
questions?
that answer your question?
Yeah, I'll get more about it later.
Okay, sorry.
Any other questions about the net clock?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Dean, paying for this clock and these other items, is this in the budget? I saw something about the 911 surcharge. Can you explain?
We have, in the 2015 budget, there are funds, we have budgeted the increase in the surcharge. This would have to be funded in part by an advance from the county that would be repaid. In effect, there's not money in the budget specifically for this, but the plan was with that additional surcharge revenue over the 6 years to have the means to do this. So the county has the cash to make the loan or the advance to the 911 fund to do that. So it will require an amendment to the budget to cover, if we're, depending on how we structure that financing. So no, there are not funds in the budget for this, but the plan was to finance that with the ultimate repayment of the loan of funds, with the 911 surcharge that's collected over time.
Now, would we have to do that tonight, or would that come in another venue?
No, that can be handled later. And I did want to get back with Commissioner Kroppa. I don't think I really answered your question. Regarding this purchase, I mean, we are, on some of these items tonight, not necessarily following our purchasing policy, because normally you would bid something like this out, but when you're looking at bid specs that would have all of the capabilities that you want with this particular item, Eric has mentioned that these are the features or the capabilities that you want, and there's only one vendor right now that would, provide you with that, which is for the 8,000. So in effect, you're kind of waiving your requirement, and I think the circumstances here are the situation warrants that, so.
And there was a reason for the expediting of the timeline, and that was in reference to the pool.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I.
Yeah,
That's where I was going, Eric.
We sort of moved this forward at 911 to start bringing this project to the board earlier because of the availability of funds in this pool. Entities from all over the state of Michigan are pulling from these pools, or from this one pool.
We want to be first.
Yeah, the quick history is PFN, when they built the fiber network in the Upper Peninsula, they actually, in working with the dispatch centers up there, they built it CAD first, CAD being the computer-aided dispatching. And they had a grant, I don't remember what grant that was, but the UP ended up with a grant to fund that project. It was then later that they came back and looked at PFN for delivery of 911 calls. So they approached it the same way down here, and we've had pricing back from PFN as a region of $600,000 to build this network. They came back about a month and a half ago and said it is now zero as far as what the local government would have to pay. Because they realized, hey, if we build this exactly backwards from what we did in the UP, we can actually have the technical pool pay for that initial construction. Now, mind you, for record's sake, it's not $600,000. That was their number a while ago. They've been working and getting that number lower. They're not going to take $600,000 out of the technical pool. But the problem is, once they approached Lansing with that concept, certain counties in the lower part of Michigan that have a lot of dispatch centers said, hey, we can do the same thing. And they will suck that pool dry in a matter of a few months if we don't get in first.
So we need to be first.
And you've already made the motion and passed that, so that ball is started, as long as you sign those resolutions. That's the key piece. Then once that PFN network is here and the fiber is here, all these other things that allow you, don't mandate, but allow you to work in a regional capacity are then possible. So sharing of phone systems, sharing of Spectracom net class, sharing of radio technology, those are possible, but you're not committing that you have to play with your neighbors. I would recommend it because you're going to save money, but you don't have to.
Cool.
Regional 911 systems are popping up all over the state, and that's not necessarily where we are or even on our horizon, but the potential is there if we purchase the appropriate equipment, and it'll give us longevity with it. And as far as the overall picture of this, this is just part one of what's going to come to the board. There's two different things to 911, and one is the equipment in our building that our central dispatch uses. The other is the radios, the receiving end. You know, somebody calls 911, and the phone line takes it here to central dispatch, and we're talking about that right now. But what we haven't talked about yet is when central dispatch then radios out to North Flight and Metro and City Fire and all of that. And that's where we're looking ahead at 911 Central Dispatch Board to create a giant project that utilizes the service charge that was passed by the voters to its fullest benefit. And what that would be is encompassing not only the things that we hopefully approve tonight on this board, but the rest of the radio system in one giant package that allows us a break in price because it's purchased in such a large amount. And also, if we can get moving quickly enough, we can also qualify for an additional discount, which I'm really hoping we can extend by 30 days as I explain the way the government works to this poor guy. But this is just a teeny little piece of the puzzle. But the exciting part of it, and what Eric's done and Jason has done and Greg has done, and everybody here working behind the scenes, is created an entire program that can not only bring us, we're like Pony Express days right now. So we just want to get up to 2015, but it looks beyond. And it allows for changes in technology or how we may regionalize with our partners and become regional 911 systems. So that's why this project is exciting to someone like me who's been following it for so long, because this is just part of it. And all of the pieces will eventually fit in that this board will see. But the amount of work being done behind the scenes right now is tremendous for this project with Eric and Jason and everyone else. So that's kind of why things may seem a little odd to this board, because it's just one part of it. And as Dean says, as far as waiving the traditional maybe purchasing, it's because this is going to be part of a ultimately multi-million-dollar system that connects all of our first responders with the citizens, with the central dispatch staff, which we don't have right now as reliable as we would like to have.
And also to other 911 centers that have the same capability.
Yeah, like if something happened, say we had a catastrophic failure here, it just moves right on over to Antrim or Leelanau or whatever. Our citizens will never be without that capability to call 911. And another thing about this, because I know you skipped over a bunch of slides, but this is really cool. For the phone line, for the citizens at home that are picking up the phone and calling, talk about the difference in speed with this system.
Yeah, the 1968 technology had built into it just the way it works. It takes 4 to 7 seconds before the call starts ringing upstairs. Now the caller hears those rings. They think it's ringing somewhere. It's not. It's still trying to find a path into the dispatch center. So anybody that's ever called 911, they often think, man, it took the dispatcher forever to pick up. Quite often that dispatcher picked it up on the first ring, but it doesn't sound that way to the caller. The new system is sub-second.
Wow.
And when you think about 6 seconds, and you've got a baby not breathing, or whatever the situation is in front of you, 6 seconds is an eternity. And that's huge. Now multiply that over, and I don't know the stats, how many calls you get per year.
45,000 hours.
Okay, my math is terrible, but that's a lot of time.
Divided by.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of time saved in terms of, or people right now waiting to get a dispatch on.
Well, I know when you're at an intersection, the light turns green. If you wait 6 seconds before the guy in front of you moves, like you're already on the horn, you know?
In some intersections, it'll be red again, I think.
Yeah. Okay, any more discussion? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You're doing pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll warn you, here's the biggie.
All right.
The phone system. This is not biggie price-wise, but this is the one that is a sole source that I need your approval to go sole source on this. The NG911 phone system, as I said, you currently have a product from Positron. Positron a few years ago was purchased by a company called Intrado. Intrado has been involved in 911, and they actually handle, I don't want to say they're part of the 6-second problem, but they handle your 911 calls today. They are a component of that AT&T design. Great company, they make a great product. A few years ago, they purchased Positron, so now they actually have a phone system that they can sell. My recommendation is to stay with that system. We'll get into those details in a minute, but a couple things are, if you upgrade from a Positron to an Intrado system, your dispatchers have very little to learn. It's kind of like going from Windows XP to Windows 7. Yeah, a little bit painful. It's not like Windows 7 to Windows 8 or from an Apple to Windows. It's a very consistent upgrade path for them. The current system that you have, I don't think we really need to go here, but it's end of life, unsupported, really needs to be upgraded. We also need to look at the regional aspects again. So if those colors show, hopefully they do, yep. They're not showing here. This is, we couldn't get answers south of that line in Michigan. We had so many white counties that we just had no idea what they had for systems. They weren't giving us answers back. So from everything from Roscommon and Manistee northward, these are who have Viper systems. Those are the green. And the blue are the counties that are in need of a new system, and I can tell you 2 of those at least are already looking at Viper. And then we have Leelanau and Benzie, and I will go out on a limb and say that they bought other systems mainly because of the price. They didn't have the funding to buy what they wanted, and they would have rather have had a Viper system. And I'll go on a further limb that in a couple of years, they will probably be asking if they can join with this regional network and share some of these Vipers that are going in other parts of the region. I can't speak for them, but I think that's just the trends I see in other parts of the country. So looking at this, it used to be that the phone system in the back room had to be in the back room. It had to be next to your dispatchers. That's not necessarily the case today. And having one system, as redundant as that system may be in the back room, it's still one room, and that room can burn, it can be vandalized, anything can happen to that, and your dispatch center would be down. So in our discussions with Intrado, we've been looking at how can we set this up in a more redundant manner, and they have what's called a multi-node scenario, where they can take even numbers of systems, 2, 4, 8, that type of thing, and they can bind those together so that they look like one solution. So CCE Central Dispatch, that's Sheboygan, Charlevoix, and Emmett County, they have a Viper that's about 2 years old. They have also very much wanted to have a redundant system for that, but they didn't have another $200,000, $300,000. They actually had to switch vendors, so theirs was more expensive than what yours will be. But they've been looking at Grand Traverse County and saying, you know, if you guys had a Viper and we have a Viper, we can make them look like one unit. And we could literally pull the plug on either one of those, and both dispatch centers continue to operate and continue to take their own calls for their own county. That's cool, and that's something we do not and cannot have today with the current system. And if we have different systems, you can't get them to talk together like that. They will not back each other up. So when I look at this region, I go, all I see out here for modern systems are Vipers. That's a very compelling reason to say, we should probably buy an Intrado Viper. Now, moving on a little bit from that, we could buy 2 systems, but you'd probably be in that $500,000 range. And you could put one on the CCE, you could put one someplace else, geographically separated. I don't think that's a good use of funds when we can buy this system, and actually our latest quote, I think, was in that $145,000 range instead of $160,000. So we still have some number crunching to do with them and some contract negotiation with them, but I think this is the most cost-effective solution for the county and gives you the most redundancy in your system. Any questions?
Okay. Do you want to do a motion first and a second and then discussion? That's probably what we should do.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I would move to enter into contract negotiations with Intrado, Inc. for NG 911 phone system.
Second?
And Commissioner Crawford seconds that. Now, discussion.
Dean has his hands up. Hand.
Sorry, Dean, I didn't see you.
This afternoon, again, following our purchasing, this is outside of how you would normally do this, but I did talk to Greg Clark. I told Jason that I wanted to talk to someone who had actually gone through a competitive bidding process on the system. although this was done 2 years ago. Charlevoix, he's the Assistant Director of the 911 Authority for Charlevoix, Emmett, and Sheboygan. They partnered with the Upper Peninsula. Again, it was 2 years ago, but they have this same system. It's probably not, and they're moving to the IP-based.
They, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, and Emmett County passed the same resolution with PFN last week. All three counties passed that the same week.
So I did want to verify that 911 authority would allow us to have the redundant capability. Mr. Clark was very excited that we would have this, or that we're looking at it. But again, it is, we are not necessarily following our purchasing policy, but I think there have been explanations provided or reasoning why you would want to do this. And obviously, our consultant is recommending this, so just wanted to make it clear that, you know, we're not, this hasn't been the result of a competitive bid, but it is being recommended, and I do support this for what I heard, you know, last week at the 911 board meeting.
Thank you, Dean. Anybody else?
We were lucky to have Dean at that meeting. He was very helpful. And just, again, remembering this is just one small puzzle piece in a much bigger puzzle, and there is a reason for the expedited factor of the pool funding and how we hopefully will get a discount on a overall project that includes not just the 911 central dispatch equipment, but the radio equipment. That was the primary reason for why this seems a little bit off. But I think, you know, one thing I would point out is I don't understand why Grand Traverse County isn't a leader in 911 in the state of Michigan. We strive to be a leader in so many things. But, I mean, I would point you to think again that we're looking at a map of Michigan with a color for our county that says end of life. I mean, something as critical as public safety to our community. We can look at every survey that's been done in 20 years here. Public safety has been the number one thing that was important to the people that lived here. It is on our strategic plan. It is discussed all the time. And we are sitting at an end-of-life county for 911. And it's so much so that our citizens went to the polls last year and voted an additional surcharge just to make sure that we did our job and took us off of that end-of-life map. So this phone system has been interesting to learn about. I've enjoyed the process, and I have a lot of faith in the information that we're getting. And I feel real good about the recommendations and have been kept apprised of the entire process and have appreciated that very much. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wheelock?
You know, I have no problem with moving forward with this and with these technical equipment purchases because of the fact that I think it is essential that we're consistent in the type of equipment that we purchase. But that being said, I would like to see something very soon about what the big picture looks like. You know, we talk about, you know, where we're buying this piece now, but eventually we're going to buy radios for police cars, fire trucks, whatever the situation is. I'd like to see what that whole picture looks like and an approximation of what that price tag is.
I can tell you why it isn't here tonight. There's, I don't know how many emergency entities in Grand Traverse County. We have the independent ambulances, Northflight, Blair, Peninsula, City Fire, all that. They all needed to go to their respective boards before anything came before our board. They asked us for 1 month for that. And so that's where we're going. However, let me finish though. What we're approving tonight would happen either or without the radio system. This is the 911 central dispatch equipment with or without that radio system. And the reason why is maybe at some point in the future we would want to approve the radio system or join together with our fellow counties in a regional authority. And this is the only equipment that will allow us for that. So although it is separate, it still stands alone on its own, but I just want everyone to know that when things come forward in the future, it's already been thought out by Eric and Jason and everybody that this will take us into the future to whatever path we choose to go down to bring the best public safety to our county.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, my only comment is, I certainly understand that, and I know how many agencies are involved. I think it's essential that we see a big picture of what this whole thing looks like. You know, I personally carried one of those radios for 36 years, so I know how that process works, and I know what the communication requirements are, and I know about more than I'd like to know about some of the limitations of our current system. You know, I can take you to houses in Long Lake Township that you can't talk to central dispatch from the driveway, let alone from in the basement. You know, but that being said, you know, I think it's absolutely essential that we move forward with this, but I do think it's important that we see what the overall picture is going to look like too.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? So, do we have a motion and a second? We do, no?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Okay.
I'm starting to believe in you now.
Yeah.
The big question is if we believe in Dean and him knowing that he's going to get enough money off the surcharge to pay for all of
He
this.
will.
There and
I
already
believe in
looked at it.
Dean. I
We're going to
believe
make it
Dean.
work.
He is going to make it work. He will.
Been on this for 3 months.
I think this is really your audio recorder, although they're recording more than audio in some cases, in some places, but so it's just now being referred to as the recorder. The current recorder has had multiple equipment failures over the last year, and it is not IP capable. So as you move into a next-gen 911 dispatch center, your current recorder is not going to be able to record all of those audio signals. So we're looking at, it needs to be replaced. You did an RFP last fall before my involvement. I reviewed that RFP process. Jason, I believe, is the one that drove that. And I really see no problem with the RFP process that was implemented. Now, the specific details of that, there are a couple little things that are going to need to be changed, so I don't think we can say we're going to go out and buy exactly what was proposed in that. But what was very interesting is, there were multiples that could have responded. DSS Corporation is a Michigan-based company. They did not respond to the RFP. VTI is another company. They do not have any Michigan clients, although they have a very impressive system. A little bit concerned, though, that they don't have anybody in Michigan, and they would be using vendors who probably aren't as familiar with that system as we might like. They were $59 higher, and then Van Malcolm, or NICE is the product, is the company that you're currently working with, and they were, in this case, low bidder. So my recommendation is to stay with them, but also for a couple more reasons. Their product, or the product that they represent, NICE, is also the same product that Motorola uses. That'll be the next item that we're going to talk about, the radio consoles. And Motorola uses the NICE product as their recorder. So your radio recorder, which we're going to get to the radio system in a minute, and your VHF radios and your telephones and all those other things that are being recorded can actually then appear as one system to the dispatch personnel that are pulling those recordings for the prosecutor or whoever is asking for them. So it makes a lot of sense to stay with the current product that you have. In that RFP process, like I said, there were pennies or dollars different, tens of $50, $60 different. So my recommendation is to remain with NICE, revise that specification slightly for the way the radio system is being built and the slight changes in the phone system. And I guess at this point we're looking for an approval to enter into that contract negotiation with them.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay, to Crawford. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Radio console. This console is to replace the current system that you have. What you currently have is a Motorola Gold Elite. Age on that, I don't remember, 20 years? You've gotten a good life out of it. The Motorola MCC 7500 is what we have been looking at. I'm going to jump ahead here just so you guys can see the map. This is what it looks like, again, in that same region that we looked at with the phone system. These are the counties that are currently using Motorola or the MPSCS, Michigan Public Safety Communications System. And we've got this band across from Benzie County across that are not currently on Motorola or the MPSCS. I'm not going to speculate as to why. rely on that, other than we already know your system is old and it can't connect to that network today. So that's what the map looks like. If we jump back, again, this is a regional thing. It is an IP-based radio console. That means, for example, let's say your dispatcher had to bail out of this building. Chemical spill, attack, pick whatever scenario you want. Greg's really good at coming up with those. And today, you'd be down to portables. That's the only thing that you'd be able to dispatch with. In a MCC 7500 scenario, that's an IP system. You can pull up your radios from any place else that has one of those systems. So during that time that you're transitioning to some other location, another dispatch center that has that same system, I'm going to pick on CCE again. Full disclosure, they are one of my clients and very familiar with their network. They could dispatch for you. They could control all your radios down here. That's what's cool about this. That's what's cool about regional interoperability. It gives you a couple hours to get set up someplace else, to get your people to drive someplace else. Those 5, 10, 20-minute failures, the overload of stuff, all those things come into play. So this just fits into that whole vision again, and there is no other solution that can do this. LCC 7500 is the only solution that can be directly connected to the FPSCS network. That says a lot in terms of how you can then communicate with your surrounding counties, again, those border issues, and it fills in a lot of gaps in communication. I'm going to actually ask Jason if you want to fill anything in on this, or I'm good.
He's on a roll, you're going to let him go.
This is part of that larger project, though. It doesn't need to be. This would be purchased, in my opinion, regardless of what you do with your mobiles in your fire, EMS, and law vehicles. This system is still the system that you should purchase. However, if it's purchased with that, what I heard was that Motorola was providing added discounts if that was a full purchase, and I'm not going to even try to quote those numbers of what that was. I believe that this system, though, it's state contract pricing, so that's, I guess, another point that we need to specify is that this has already been bid out by the state of Michigan. I think then that provides an exception in your purchasing policy that you, or it's not really an exception then.
Yeah.
And the pricing that has come back from Motorola so far has been less than that state contract price already. So they've already beat that contract price.
I'll go. Mr. Chairman, I would move to enter into contract negotiations with Motorola for MCC 7500 radio consoles.
Is there a second?
I'll support.
Okay. Any more discussion?
How many consoles will we be installing in the dispatch center?
6.
Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Is that it?
For Commissioner Wheelock's sake, here is the summary that I have for these 5 components: 0, 8,000, 160,000, 39,000, and 600,000. That's the scope of what would be happening here within dispatch. Now, there are things outside of that, as far as we mentioned, fire and EMS, mobile radios and things like that. But it's a summary.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Especially all of you that worked on this. Very good job. Okay, let's see. Now we come to finance. General fund, April 30th. Is that you, Dean?
That would be me.
Okay.
On your page 54, we have our general fund as of April 30th. And I generally point out our cash balance is negative, and that's primarily due to the fact that we don't start collecting our tax revenue until July, but you see that you have we're basically living off of our fund balance for the first half of the year. That's not uncommon. Jumping down then to the next page, there's a summary or a comparison of the revenues with the prior year, and I'll just touch on a couple. Today, we did bill for the first quarter CPO contracts, so that local unit contribution variance is because we had not billed for the community policing officer, so that will correct itself. And then the transfer in, the difference there is because we had used up our revenue sharing reserve, and, you know, the transfer in amounts are simply budgeted at a lower amount because we're now receiving the state revenue sharing. So everything is in line with the budget. No concern really at this point in time on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, there are some variances here. We're explaining what those are. Some are just the timing of when we bill indirect costs. Under public safety, a big change is the fact that we've moved our 911 central dispatch to a separate fund. I mean, that accounts for actually a decrease in that category, but then we're listing there what the other costs are. Again, some of that is we invoice for the indirect costs sooner, and we're more at full staffing in our corrections department compared to a year ago. The health and welfare is a timing difference as to when the payment is being made over to the regional entity. So at this point in time, through 4 months, your general fund, everything is in line with what has been budgeted. So just information, unless you have questions, everything is tracking appropriately at this point.
Any questions for Dean? Okay, now we're going to move to Drain Revolving Fund, and would you take over, Commissioner?
We do have one other
Don't we have
item.
the concealed pistol
concealed
license?
Oh, okay.
Concealed.
You're right. Yeah.
The fund.
We're required now, by a change in the law, that establish a separate fund for the concealed pistol licensing activity. And I will say that I personally don't feel that this is necessary, but it's a state requirement. And should I say that?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
you can. You're allowed to say
The
that.
requirement if you want to.
This is, that's what the law says.
I know.
But their whole purpose with this is to keep those revenues separate and not to commingle them within your general fund. And there's a difference here in what the state asks us to do with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board requirements. So, but the law does require the separate fund, and that's what I'm asking approval. I don't set up any funds without having the board approval. This is required by state law. On the second page, it does indicate that the revenues from those permits or fees will be deposited in the new fund, and then it identifies what costs we can charge against that fund. But it does require the establishment of a separate fund to comply with the state law, and I'm asking for your approval on that.
And I just gave the county $117, I think, to renew my concealed weapon permit, so I'm glad the county's getting some
Gotta
money.
check and see when mine's up.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion about this? And then we can do some discussion.
I'll make a motion to establish Fund 263 as the concealed pistol licensing fund.
Support.
Okay, now discussion. Yes.
Dean, how does that jive with the audit next year if you're doing something that is state mandated but not supported by generally accepted accounting?
That's a very good question, because we actually have that issue. We have that issue in one other area, our technology fund. Usually the GASB will win out. I checked the Treasury website to see if a lot of times they'll provide guidance on these new requirements. There's no guidance at the state level on this, and we will deal with that, I guess, when our auditors come in and say, okay, there's the general rule with special revenue funds is that the GASB wants to see fewer special revenue funds, and this is a very small activity type fund, in my opinion. But I don't get to make necessarily. I don't have the final say on this. It makes sense for us to comply with the state law.
Isn't the governor a CPA?
Yes.
What's going on? Come on, Rick.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now are we at revolving drain fund?
Yes,
Okay, would you take over?
I will. Next item on the agenda is the drain revolving fund. Dean, would you
Yeah.
like me to do it, or would you like to do it?
No, I'll start, and we have Kevin here if you have questions. But back in 2011, the Drain Commissioner requested the county to advance funds for work that he was doing with the Duck Lake, the lake level on Duck Lake, and the board approved a $10,000 advance. For a couple of years, Kevin was compiling information, and we really didn't do anything on, I shouldn't say we didn't do anything. I mean, right now, he's very actively working on that project, in addition to some other drains that he was asked to explore if we needed. And in April, the Drain Commissioner mentioned that he was going to work with the Spicer Group on some studies that were required regarding the new dams, and then also for any meetings or hearings that were required. And because of the work that he's doing on the Duck Lake lake level and these additional drains, we need to have more money to work with. The Drain Revolving Fund is another fund that's a function of the state Uniform Chart of Accounts. Your general fund will generally advance those dollars to the Drain Commissioner so he can do that work. And then once those projects are completed, the special assessment districts that are established are then charged with recovering those dollars through, a tax bill that goes out. So what I'm requesting here is an additional $15,000 advance to the Drain Revolving Fund so the Drain Commissioner can complete the work that he has in process. And Kevin can go into more details on that. But
Before we have discussion and questions, is there a motion? Commissioner Kropa?
I'll make a motion to authorize an additional $15,000 advance from the general fund to the Drain Revolving Fund to provide the necessary funds for the drain projects currently in process. The Drain Revolving Fund will be reimbursed as the related special assessment revenues are collected.
Is there support?
Support?
We have a motion and support. Discussion? Any questions?
I asked you a lot of questions last time. I'm good
Commissioner
with it.
Wheelock has his hand up.
Well, I guess I have a number of questions. Number one is where are we taking this fund from, or this 15,000 from? Is it coming from contingency?
This actually, because it's an advance from the general fund, it's not an expenditure. It's basically, in its simplest terms, a loan.
Okay.
In the past, we've had funds within the fund that were, I think we had a $30,000 advance at one point in time. It's probably been 10 or 12 years those dollars were transferred back, but it's not an expenditure. You're simply giving the Drain Revolving Fund some of your cash. It's accounted for as a loan, basically. It's on the books as an asset in your general fund, and it's on the books in the drain fund as a liability or as an advance.
Okay, the second piece of that is, we put $10,000 in this fund in February of 2011, if my memory is correct, for the creation of a special assessment district in Duck Lake Peninsula. Here we are, we're 4 years later, we haven't created the special assessment district. What kind of a time frame are we looking at to get this thing done? I've been involved in a few special assessment districts over the years, and I don't know that I've ever seen one that took 4 years to create, so.
Good question, Commissioner Wheelock. Hi, my name is Kevin McEllier, your County Drain Commissioner. We are currently working on the Duck Lake Dam Special Assessment District. I anticipate that will be completed and on the winter tax rolls. So it's currently in process. The money we had earmarked for that, the 10 grand, those invoices have not come in. They're being held until the completion of the work. Meanwhile, the Road Commission petitioned to start these other drains, and we've incurred costs for those. So we've been very busy. All of these drains, if they come to fruition, will all be paid back on the winter tax rolls.
The other point of your question is, why did it take 4 years? There's a sequence of events to get to this point, to get the contract and get it off and moving. And then also the collaboration between the prosecutor's office to work with my department and do the legal work to keep our costs down. So we finally got to that point, and I promise you it will be completed by the winter tax roll this year.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Klaus?
I'm curious, you were saying you were working with our legal department
That's correct.
locally here?
Yes, sir.
And then the attorneys came from Lansing for the meetings of the drain district?
For the other drains that we were petitioned by
Right.
law to pursue.
Right, why were they the best priced firm at that time? Or did we go out for bids for them?
It was relative to the purchasing policy, each project, I made an executive decision. These are the most efficient, the most qualified drain engineers and attorneys. And so in that efficiency, that keeps the cost down. And then also, you know, I want to work with local firms, but because they're out of Lansing, we said, let's do all these meetings in one fell swoop. So we had 5 meetings over the course of 2 days, just one night lodging. So all of that together hopefully answers your question. That was my decision to work with this experienced group rather than training other lawyers and engineers who are not experienced in drain code work.
You would have to train other attorneys and engineers?
Yeah, and I'm not staffed for that.
Chris, do you agree with that? Is there nobody locally that?
Well, I'll answer it this way. For the Duck Lake Special Assessment District, we're hoping that we can work with Scott Howard. And we're hoping his involvement is limited and that I can do the bulk of the work. But that's a special assessment district. Would he be qualified to do stuff like this? Honestly, I don't know. Scott Howard is kind of our local environmental lawyer who also does municipal work. But again, it's hard for me to answer that question.
Okay.
I can add on to that, a good start. The Duck Lake Dam is more relative to Lake Level Act laws, much simpler than the drain code. Okay, the Lake Level Act models and references the drain code, but it's a much simpler creature. You can make an expensive mistake in your drain code proceedings, so you want experienced lawyers relative to that. So 2 different laws here.
The minutes that were taken, I know the supervisor in Long Lake Township had to pay $190 just to get the minutes of that meeting?
I'm not,
They
that's
did.
new information. No, that would be the full transcript. I had to pay $150 just for the presence of the court reporter, and that was the minutes that we have, the shortened version. Apparently, Long Lake Township requested the full transcript, word by word, and that
Okay.
seems like a reasonable fee.
So we didn't have any, for a public meeting, we didn't have local people taking minutes for?
A court reporter, yes, this court reporter is on Veterans Drive, Northwest Reporting. So we used a local court reporter. Now, again, you're talking transcript versus simple minutes. The full transcript, we did not pay for. The municipalities had an option to go ahead and pay for those if they wanted to pursue that option. The county, I did not pay those costs. But we did use local labor for that.
All right, anything else?
I have one other thing. With the invoice that I've seen coming in through the attorneys, there's nothing on the invoices that you have presented for the mountain drain.
For the what?
For the mountain drain district?
Good question. They waived their fees. They wrote off their fees because that was an unsuccessful effort.
So when I go through the time that they spent on travel for coming up here for the 2 days, there's 24 hours of travel and meetings. Do you think that that is correct, or would they, because it seems to me that they probably would have taken care of those 5 meetings in that 24 hours?
They were actually up here prior to, the night before, getting situated, as well as travel to all of the meetings over the course of 2 days, as well as return travel. And for all the members, so.
I thought you said there was only one night lodging.
Correct, one night lodging, but now you're talking about travel costs.
Right.
Yeah. So lodging is different than travel.
No.
Mileage costs, right?
The hours that they spent on the meetings and the travel is 24 hours.
I'd like to look at those invoices further. I'd be happy to sit down with you and look at that.
Okay, because I have them here.
Yeah.
I just, it looks to me when I go through these invoices that they could have possibly, I'm not saying they did, but they could have possibly taken all of the time spent on 5 drains and divided it by 4 and called it an invoice.
But yet they still did write off the failed River Mountain drain.
That River Mountain drain would be the 5th drain. I'm
Correct.
saying they took all the invoices, all the time, divided it by 4, and wrote up 4 invoices with 5 projects worth of time, is what I feel, when I look at the travel time spent.
Well, they had every right for the travel time. I mean, they were generous to write off the failed, just hear me out, please.
Yep.
That the failed meeting, and I trust them, their word, that they are writing off their legally hourly fees on the failed board determination meeting. But I'd be happy to review that further with you.
Where I'm going with it is that it's put onto the other 4 drains and districts to pay for it, because there's nothing being paid for at the mountain drain. So they're taking the travel time and everyone else is paying for it. That's how I see it. I could be wrong. I didn't do their books, but there's, seems to be, I'm sure if they had more than 24 hours, they probably would have spent an extra night here. So I just, I'd
Do
have a
these
hard time
invoices go
supporting
to
this.
claims?
Pardon?
Do these invoices go to claims as they're invoices paid for by the county? Am I correct?
Yes,
And they will.
they go to claims.
And they haven't gone to claims yet?
I'm going to take another look based on the questions that Commissioner Klaus has raised, and I can work with Kevin on that. That's a good point. I don't know the answer to that.
Are these invoices paid out of the drain revolving fund?
They will be.
Okay,
But they will not be paid until claims approves them, so.
right. I mean, I guess that would be my point. You're on claims. Is that where you saw these at?
I actually went to Dean's office and asked for them, and he had them.
Okay.
So I was curious about it.
They haven't gone to claims
No.
yet? Okay, so we didn't have something
No.
approved that, okay.
No.
Okay.
Okay, then it would,
So if we,
hasn't happened yet.
so if we handle it in claims, are you good to go on the loan? Well, we'll know in a
No, I
minute.
still-
We'll take a vote. We'll take a roll call on it.
Okay.
Commissioner Crawford,
Yes.
Kropa,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Wheelock,
No.
Klaus,
No.
Motion passes. All right.
Thank you very much, Dean, Commissioners.
Okay, let's see if I can, wish I could find a better way to go back and forth.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Certainly.
Okay, we're now on unfinished business. URS invoice. I think that would be Dean, wouldn't it?
Yes, I am working with URS to resolve the discrepancies that were noted in that invoice. They work with their corporate office on that, and they told me it might take as long as 2 weeks for them to dig into their billing records and get that corrected. So when I do have that invoice, I will bring it back.
All righty.
I have a
Go ahead.
question for Dean. Dean, are they monthly invoices from URS, or is this just whenever?
I
Or quarterly, I guess I should say.
They could be monthly, but I really don't know. but you are going to see them.
Because I know comes of no surprise to you, I have tried to locate the URS invoices and have not been able to. They weren't part of the board packets in the past, and again, I wanted to say how much I appreciated us finally seeing money that, our taxpayers are paying. If the case arises that there's a discrepancy in the invoices, as we possibly have here, and we're looking at, looking back at old URS invoices, if it's 2 weeks for one invoice, we're talking probably about a significant amount of time and effort, and that was what I was wondering where we were going with that.
If I could offer, and based on the discussion I had with both Dan and Troy, Dan Devon and Troy Apparello, who you probably know.
Know them both, yeah.
The task summary that Commissioner Klaus, and I give him credit for that, when I take a week off, I'm going to have him come in and sit in my chair. And I'll do his job, but, because I would like to get out. But their internal time reporting did not match with the task summary. He verified that the hours were correct, and he said that should not happen, but, I mean, that does raise a very valid concern. And I can definitely ask for those invoices at some point in time. We do have a meeting here tomorrow in this chamber, and I also would feel more comfortable going back and looking at some previous invoices to make sure that things do, make sense, and, they total what they should be, and they're assigned to the right tasks, because this is a very detailed project, a very detailed work order, and there's no reason that we can't ensure that and we need to ensure that those invoices are accurate.
I think that if it possibly was something where the time clock or how they assign their timing to things was off, then there is the potential that it's been off before. And one of my main concerns about the IT is that it spends taxpayer funds, local, state, and federal taxpayer funds, and anything that spends taxpayer funds or approves it has a board of people elected to represent the citizens oversee that, just like Ron looked at the board, or at the invoice. Well, we never had the opportunity to look at invoices before for URS, and I don't, to the best of my knowledge, know that the city commission is involved with that either. And we're the two elected governing boards of citizens involved with the IT, so I think its time has come. I think there's a reason we have claims, and we have oversight, and we have boards, and we have policies and procedures. And this is ultimately a little over $20 million project of taxpayer funds. And it's odd that I can't seem to find, I'm a taxpayer, I can't seem to find it. So I would like to see past invoices if we do identify a problem with the way that it's billed or how they calculate it. I would request at least that we look at once prior to that and make sure that the same calculation error didn't occur.
I will do my best to secure those invoices so you and I can review them.
I appreciate that very much. And I'm excited they're going to come to the board.
Actually, we could just hand them to Commissioner Klaus.
Yeah, he's probably way better at it than me. I'm still trying to figure out the funding spreadsheet from CRA. And even, I feel so much better that Kim said, no, you're right, it's really hard to understand. But we're working on a better spreadsheet for that too. So I really appreciate your time in this project.
Thank you very much. Any other comments about URS? All right, now let's move on then to Brownfield Representative. Immediate approval, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the Grand Traverse Board appoint Dean Bott to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority as the designee for the Grand Traverse County Administrator, effective immediately.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Let's do a roll call vote.
Kropa,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus,
Yes.
Crawford,
Yes.
Lathrop.
Yes. Okay, move on to new business. Looks like we don't have any. Second public comment. Anybody want to comment? Don't be shy. Okay, we're closing.
Look at Bill's nodding off.
Okay,
Doesn't want to do it.
don't the students have to give a speech?
They just want a signature.
A summary,
Okay.
15-minute summary, it's okay.
All right,
You forgot the
committee,
quiz.
committee reports, commissioner committee reports.
I have one.
Okay.
I went to the Senior Expo today, and at the time that I went there, which was roughly around 2, they had already had 1,200 people go through, and it was, the vendors' booths were full from one end to the other, and there were so many people there, and they did a great job. And I just wanted to say, as always, I continue to be impressed with the Senior Center, the Commission on Aging, BASA, and for those that weren't able to go to it, there are so many programs available to our area seniors and people caring for them, and they can be directed to those programs by at least making the initial contact with our Commission on Aging. And I just wanted to say, well done. I have not ever been to one, and it was really nice.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other? How about notices and announcements? Yes.
I had a conversation with Commissioner Johnson this afternoon, primarily because he is not here. I recommended to him a process to move forward for our special meeting to discuss the job description for the county administrator. He gave me his support for the process I'm going to suggest. I am going to suggest that we ask Paula Segala to facilitate and manage the process. And by that, I mean she would meet individually with each commissioner and hear his or her ideas, what they're looking for in the way of talent from the new administrator, et cetera, et cetera. This will give each commissioner an opportunity not only to meet Paula and get to know her, but it will also, I believe, facilitate and move the process forward in a much more efficient, time-productive manner. Then Paula would put together, based upon what she heard individually from commissioners, she would put together what she heard and present it to us at a special board meeting where we would have a discussion. Rather than have each of us sit here and go, well, you know, I really would like this, and I really think this talent's important, and why do you think that's, let's have her hear each of us individually, and then bring her in and to our special meeting, and I think it will go faster. So that was my idea. I have Commissioner Johnson's support. Let me know what your thoughts are. And also, I will have, based upon some commissioner comments I've heard at open meetings, clear that, make that very clear. I have heard, for instance, Commissioner Crawford say she would like, she wants communication, and this board as a whole wants communication with their employees. I'm going to bring a suggestion from Paula to the board at our next board meeting for discussion. So I will have that on the agenda. I'm letting you know in advance.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any other notices or announcements? All right.
So, just real quick, just to clarify, you're bringing something to the board meeting on Wednesday
I am.
that Paula has gathered
Based upon her discussions with me and her viewing the county board meetings, she heard that the county board wants to have a communication process because communication has not been as good as it could have been, and is not as good as it can be. So she's going to bring something forward to us. I will have it in your packet for your review and discussion at our end of the month board meeting.
So for a timeline of individual meetings.
I think that should be scheduled as soon as you would like to schedule it. For myself, I am probably going to schedule it after the GFOA conference because I think I will have a better, I will be educated more. That's just me personally.
So
but
this
I
isn't
would,
something we need by next Wednesday?
No. Oh, absolutely not.
But it is
no.
up to the individual
It is up to the
commissioners.
individual commissioner.
Okay.
And certainly you do not have to do it, but I think it would facilitate the process, and I think that will move us together in more cohesive manner.
Well, the way that I would think it would be done most expeditiously would be, I don't even like using the word doodle poll. If she is a contract employee by
She
the hour.
is.
We need to utilize her time in the most efficient way possible.
That is correct.
Understanding the fact that there's 7 of us that have jobs and families and
That
things
is
that we do.
correct. That's why I
So if
suggested,
she could choose a couple-day stretch and put out a bunch of options, and then we just answer the email, if Ron takes Monday from 1 to 1:30, then I can't fill that in. So I'll fill in Tuesday from 2 to 2:30.
I will have Chris Kramer, and who is Chris Kramer, I know you're watching.
Chris?
Hey, Chris. I will ask Chris to do a doodle poll.
I would like to see us move along on this in a
I-
little bit more efficient manner.
That's the goal here.
Especially with the fact that we're losing roughly a week with a lot of key staff gone
Yes.
next week. So if we were to utilize Paula's time and hours
I agree.
to the best way possible, I'm sure that 7 of us could find a time to
I
meet with her.
appreciate that suggestion. It's an excellent one.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Closed session? No? Anyone?
We are adjourned?
Guess not, then we're adjourned. Thank you.
7:30. 7.